Tucson had a program called Ethnic Studies where they divided kids just like the Old South, blacks in classroom A, whites in classroom B, Hispanics in classroom C. And part of that curriculum was explicitly critical race theory. So I wrote a bill and we put a stop to it. The Democrats were saying, we want our schools to be gun free. Well, if you tell the world that your school is gun free, what you're really saying is, here I am, I'm a victim, you can come get me anytime and there's nobody here to protect me.
Hello and welcome. This is Olivia Brown with WJ Now. Today we have a very special guest, Tom Horne, who has been in politics and is taking a dive back in. He served in the Arizona House, he's been school superintendent, and he's also served as Arizona Attorney General. Now he is running again for the school superintendent. We'd love to have you here, Tom.
Thank you. Yeah, my friends are telling me that having been Arizona Attorney General, I'm going backwards by running for superintendent again. But my response is no, the big problems are in the schools, and that's really what I want to work on.
Exactly. So one of the themes that you're running on is taking critical race theory out of our schools. How are you planning on doing that?
Well, there was a bill that I wrote that the legislature passed back in 2010 when I was last superintendent, because Tucson had a program called Ethnic Studies where they divided kids just like the Old South, blacks in classroom A, whites in classroom B, Hispanics in classroom C, Native Americans in classroom D. And part of that curriculum was explicitly critical race theory. And so I wrote a bill to put a stop to it. It was passed by the legislature my last year as superintendent. I then enforced it as Attorney General, and we put a stop to it. So if necessary, it'd be nice to have new legislation, but if necessary, I could use at least part of the old legislation.
Definitely. And we are recently seeing that books in schools have really been hurting our children. Specifically, there was a video that is going viral now. I'm going to show it to you. It is of an Oklahoma father and what he's doing, and we'd love to get your response from it.
Book. This is at the junior high. This book contains sexually explicit assault and battery. I hesitate to read it. I don't feel comfortable reading it to adults. 13-year-olds can check this book out. And you guys have bought it for them and provided it for them. And it needs to be corrected ASAP. Are you going to eat her? Yeah, Earl, I'm going to eat her. Do you even know how to eat? No, not really. Papa Gaines never sat you down and said, son, one day you're going to have to eat. No, but he taught me how to eat a. Yep, I would teach you some technique, but it's a little complicated. Son, I don't have time for that. I got 20 over here I need to eat. Is that right? I'm on a deadline. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on.
That is so inappropriate. What is your response to watching that dad approaching the school board in Oklahoma?
Well, it's a myth that First Amendment freedoms enable people in the schools to do whatever they want. It's not true. They're supposed to be teaching the standards that the state sets. In their private lives, they can say whatever they want and they can read whatever books they want. But the school should be under legislation, which or actions of the state board that dictate what it is that they should be teaching. And when I was superintendent, a grandmother sent me a book that was in the library of a middle school, and it had an act of forced oral sex at a party in it. And so I alerted all the middle schools to see if that was in their libraries so they'd be aware of it. I was accused of censorship, but I don't think that is censorship. It's a matter of controlling what goes on in the schools. Censorship would be if you tried to sell something in a bookstore or outside of school and the government prohibited that. That would be censorship. But the schools have standards set for them by the state. They're supposed to set their own curricula. and and teachers are expected to teach academics, and it's an abuse and unprofessional on their part to use their position to push an ideology on a captive audience. And the same applies to books in the library. At a minimum, uh, books that are questionable should require parental consent for a child to take it out.
Is there any sort of legislation that could be put forth to make sure that none of those books with sexual acts and profanity are in our schools, specifically in Arizona where you're running?
Yeah, I think in Arizona we give parents the right to have a say into what happens with their children. So I think consistent with that law, we expect our school boards to require that any questionable book require parental consent to take it out.
Previously, there have been a lot of conservatives saying that we should have cameras in our classrooms. What is your opinion on that?
I favor it. I would do it as a small experiment at first to work out the bugs and then expand it if it worked. But I served 24 years on a school board, and our rule was parents could come in the classroom anytime they wanted to and observe whatever they wanted to. So camera would be essentially the same thing as that. I had when I put a stop to ethnic studies and critical race theory in the Tucson district, they wanted me to come into a class and watch it. And I said, well, if I come into a class, it's going to be like a Potemkin village. You're going to put on a show for me that's different than what you normally teach. But I'd love to put cameras in the class so we can see what's going on all the time. And then we can judge if what you're saying is true. And they weren't interested in doing that. So I think we need legislation to authorize that.
Beyond having cameras in the classroom, you have floated the idea of having police officers in the classroom just for school safety. What is your response and reason for that?
Well, we're talking about a police officer at every school, and I've been advocating that for many years. When I was superintendent, I lobbied the legislature to appropriate money for a police officer in every school. But the economy then didn't support it, but we did the best we could. Then when I was Attorney General, I proposed that the principal send me one teacher, preferably a retired police officer or military. A lot of those are in teaching after they retire. And we would train them for free as to how to handle emergency situations. And then they'd be licensed to have a gun at school, locked up in a safe place, so that they could protect the students and the faculty if a maniac invaded the school. Now, I needed authorization from the legislature, and it failed because all the Democrats and some Republicans opposed it. And the Democrats were saying, we want our schools to be gun-free. Well, if you tell the world that your school is gun-free, what you're really saying is, here I am, I'm a victim, you can come get me anytime, and there's nobody here to protect me. I think we should have a police officer in every school, and we should have something like the program that I proposed, so that the maniacs will know they're likely to be killed if they try to invade a school and shoot kids. You haven't seen any massacres at police stations because the maniacs, as crazy as they might be, they know that there are police there that'll shoot them. We need to have police in our schools that they know will shoot them if they come in.
Definitely important. So I've been looking up your history, and it says that you were born to Polish immigrants. How has that shaped your view on immigration policy in America?
Well, my parents came legally. My parents were refugees from Hitler. They were Jewish people, lived in Poland in the 1930s. And my dad was loved to read history. He didn't have a college degree, and a lot of people didn't in those days, but he loved reading history. It made him a good interpreter of current events, and he predicted that Hitler would invade Poland. So he told everybody else to leave, and no one would listen to him. It's hard to leave your culture and your language, but even my mother didn't want to leave. My older sister was already born in Poland. She was a child, and but in those days, husbands had more influence over their wives than they do now, and he made her leave. They couldn't get into the United States legally, so they went to Canada in 1938 and stayed in Canada until they could legally come to this country in 1949. And I think that's the right way to do it. People have to do it legally. And let me say this also. I've been a big advocate of teaching objective patriotic history to our kids because the survival of my immediate family was a result of my dad's knowledge of history and ability to interpret current events. And I believe the younger generation's ability to survive will also depend on their knowledge of history and their ability to interpret current events. And so that's why I've pushed hard for teaching of objective and patriotic history.
Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you the best of luck in your race.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
We are with Kelly Cooper, who is running for Congressional District 4 in Arizona. He is a Marine Corps veteran and a business owner. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate that. We can drive 5 minutes from here and find homeless veterans all over the place, and yet we're spending $20,000 in a foreign country to talk about inclusivity. Where's the oversight? Where is the protection for the American people? Where is it that we should be looking out for the American people? I mean, we want to have influence around the world to make sure that we're spreading the word of freedom and encouraging other countries to have that and push for that. But this is something totally different. This inclusivity, especially on a woke scale, driving woke ideology, if you will, into foreign countries with taxpayer dollars that really could be used to help the homeless vets, to help feed starving children around our country. I mean, there's so many other things that we could be doing with that little bit of money. It's really unconscionable that we've done, this is what we've chosen to do. And so from my perspective, it's always going to be oversight.
Do you think that more Democrats are going to be switching independent or Republican because of these extremists?
I think that there's a growing caucus, if you will, of Democrats that are very, very disillusioned. And some of them may not go all the way to becoming a Republican, but many of them are either going to go independent or switch their votes as they're going to the polls right now. You can't see what's happening right now. It's difficult to even turn a blind eye to how bad it's become. When you've poured so much money into the economy recklessly without real foundation and oversight, you end up with this out of control inflation. When you make it so that people can't afford their gas. I filled up my truck yesterday, it was $150. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be $75, $80. People can't afford that. Democrats, independents, Republicans alike, they can't afford the policies that are leading us down this road, and they are looking for somebody to be able to represent their needs. And their needs are reducing inflation, lowering wasteful spending, getting back to a responsible, fiscally responsible Congress that's going to shepherd their money appropriately.